1. So I have two birds, a Major Mitchell's cockatoo, MM2, and a crimson-bellied conure, CBC, as well as two dogs. My birds are harness trained, so I can safely take them outside. I normally walk my dogs together and then my birds, also separately. So normally I do 3 walks a day, weather permitting. Since it was a nice evening, I decided to take my birds, both of them, out on a walk together, as I didn't feel like going on a third walk. I normally walk them separately because they get jealous when one gets attention and not the other. But my MM2 is very skittish and my CBC is extremely chill on walks. This particular day, my CBC was content to make a tent out of my hair. Once I put his flight suit, like a bird onesie and diaper all in one, and harness. My MM2 was nervously excited, screaming, flapping and talking away, happy to get outside, sitting on my hand looking around at everything. Due to both of them being very attractive birds, I try to walk them when we hardly ever see anyone. My MM2 hates everything and everyone with a passion, except me and my mum. Where I live in summer, it gets dark between 7 and 8:30 p.m, so it is easy to avoid people if needed, especially because I live in quite a middle-class area with lots of families, so if I go about 7 p.m. when most people eat, I won't usually see anyone. I am known in the area, and people usually respect my space when I have the birds. However, a lot of new properties have come on the market, so there are many new people around. I was walking back home from my usual birdwalk route, and walked down a huge flight of stairs. The sun was directly in my eyes, so I couldn't see the people at the bottom. My CBC was sound asleep in my hair, and my MM2 was looking around contentedly. When I got like 5/6 of the way down, I could see a family in the empty parking cement lot we have above the park. A man, 2 young boys, maybe 5, K1, and 7-ish kid 2, riding bikes, and a woman, EM. I was wearing a hoodie with one of those huge oversized hoods, so I put my MM2 on my other shoulder and pulled the hood up. We do this tons at home, and she likes it. I walk slightly angled so my MM2 doesn't see the bikes, kids, or the man. Then I hear the words I always dread.
"Mommy, look a bird! That lady has a bird!"
They couldn't see my CBC in my hair.
"Pretty, pretty birdie!"
I smile and wave but keep walking at the same time. It is at this stage my CBC has heard voices and wants eyes on any potential danger, so creeps up to under my chin on the collar of my hoodie. My CBC is very protective of me and attacks anyone that he senses is not good or angry, or is just a man. He hates men. My MM2 does similarly, but doesn't bite, just screams bloody murder and lunges when they get close. I hear running footsteps and think it's one of the kids walking slightly faster, hoping to discourage any interactions with them. That is when I hear the ahem. Then my MM2 screams as she had tapped the side of my hoodie my MM2 was on. My MM2 freaks the fuck out, flapping to the ground, screaming. My CBC has moved down my arm to my forearm, nattering angrily, as I pick up my MM2 and start soothing her. I look around and see EM, her kids are halfway between us and their dad, who promptly, thank heck, called them back. "The fuck is wrong with you?" I hiss, not wanting to spook my MM2 further. "My kids and I want to pet your bird," she says, pointing at my MM2. "Look, lady, I take it you have never done this before, but birds are not dogs. They're extremely skittish and particular. Plus, my birds bite, so no. I have a kangaroo pouch on my hoodie just for cases when my MM2 or my CBC gets spooked, and I slip her in so I can grab my CBC that had puffed up and was swaying aggressively from side to side, looking at EM. I put him on my shoulder outside the hoodie so he doesn't bite my ears. He does that when he gets mad sometimes, even if it's not at me. Bullshit, they're wearing leads, they're obviously tame. She turns and goes to call out to the kids. I assume, but I cut her off. No, end of. These birds are tame, but only to me. They will attack you. Leave me alone. I go to turn and the lady grabs my arm. This is when my CBC had had enough. He was a small, fist-sized ball of fury. He lunged for her hand and bit down hard. EM yelled. Luckily my CBC didn't hold on for long as she yanked her hand away. one of her knuckles bleeding. Not much, but it was bleeding. Don't fucking touch me or my animals!
How dare you? You're going to hear from the police. Wait until I talk to your parents.
I am a 22-year-old female and I look about 16 or 17. I hate my baby face. Listen up, you disgusting human disease. I'm 22. You won't be talking to my parents, but my cousin, the police lieutenant. Don't touch me or my animals again. I stormed off. I didn't want to see her expression or listen to her BS anymore. Safe to say my birds and I will just be chilling outside in our backyard for a while. This isn't the first time I've encountered ignorant people when it comes to my birds or my dogs, but it was the most extreme. 2. The scene opens up on a hot and humid summer evening at a dreaded summer league swim meet. The kind where there are 2 teams but there are 6 heats for each race. All told, there are 92 events to be swum with ages ranging from 6 and under to 16 to 18-year-olds, both boys and girls, multiple heats. It's a 6-hour ordeal. So my family is all present, wife, child who is of the older teenage years, and me, and our friends. We are sitting under the pop-up canopy enjoying a tailgate-like atmosphere with ample food and cold drinks. There were adult beverages present, but I had not partaken yet, nor had my fellow dad friend. This will become a factor later on, as we were both voluntold that we would be timers for the first half, 46 events. It would be bad form to be sloshing back a cold, frosty beverage, while trying to put on an air of competency in the 98 Fahrenheit Metro Atlanta heat. So everyone is mostly enjoying themselves. The children are doing their thing in a somewhat controlled environment. The older ones are wrangling the younger ones in their heats. The younger ones are excitedly pumping their parents for loose change and dollar bills to spend at the concession stand, on cold pizza and stale chips. There is a short break while we try to figure out the lighting situation, and DF goes to take a bathroom break. Lighting situation is all fixed, but DF is nowhere to be seen. Oh well. I can hold it, and he was just a backup timer for the lane, so I signal we are ready. DF shows back up and is uncharacteristically flustered and red in the face. We chat for a second in between races, and come to find out that he went to use the bathroom and on his way out, saw his teenage son, FTS, in a scuffle with another boy his age, but a bit younger. FTS had gotten the upper hand though, and his hands around the other boy's throat. Long story short, the other boy was bullying FTS and FTS had enough. Dad saw the tail end of it and snatched his son up and off the other. All 3 went to find the other boy's parents. They talked it out, apologies were made, and hands were shook. DF took FTS to his wife and told her what was up. All our circle of friends were present, and DF came back to the lane to finish his job. MF was in the middle of calmly talking to FTS about anger and violence when DF came back. Oh yeah, some issues to deal with, but all involved parties agreed that the situation was handled. We do our lane timing thing and finish up. We are at the mid-meet break and hand over our watches and clipboards. DF heads back to the pop-up, and I head to the bathroom because my back teeth are now floating as I have not had a chance to pee yet. I come out of the bathroom and hear a couple of voices in a heated discussion coming from the general area of our pop-up. As I get nearer, I soon see and hear it as DF with some random guy getting increasingly loud, with him and the rest of our group looking confused, and a couple of the moms are looking downright concerned and fearful. Enter from stage right our EPD, or Entitled Possible Dad. You see, he was not part of this little scuffle between the 2 boys earlier, but he saw it. At least that is what he was yelling. He saw everything and saw how FTS was beating that little boy senseless, and what kind of piece of shit parents raised a bully like that? And on and on. He is leaning over DF, and DF is sitting on one of those foldable camp chairs. EPD is pointing and hollering. MF and FTS off to the side, and all of a sudden, OFMIL stands up and goes full-on boss Karen, as in the righteous indignation of an aggrieved soccer mom who will rain down fire from your manager upon your head. Upon this EPD, he responds by ramping up his rhetoric, but he hasn't touched anyone in the past 45 seconds that it took for me to get from the bathroom to the pop-up. He is now full volume and full bore on how this young man was trying to commit malice murder, and he was going to call the police. This is when I arrived on the scene. You see, I work for a law enforcement agency. I am not a cop, but I am a sworn officer and I work a plainclothes detail. I am former military. It's how I got my civilian job, actually. And I was then working an assignment where I was supposed to blend in with bikers and hillbillies. So, imagine if you will, a 6'5" bushy-bearded biker-looking dude in flip-flops and t-shirt, putting his hand on your shoulder and saying, "I am not the police, but we can get them here quickly." He turns around, looks at me quizzically, and I ask my wife to throw me my credentials from her purse. I didn't want them to get wet when I was timing. I show them to him and ask him to take a walk with me away from these kind people, and he can explain what the issue is. Wouldn't you know it, all of a sudden his attitude and demeanor changed. We took several steps away from everyone, and I calmly got his side of the story. Turns out he didn't see anything. He had just heard a couple of other boys who were the friends of the bully talking about how FTS was choking him out and the boy couldn't breathe. He was concerned that there was a violent child in the area. I asked him if he was aware that both sets of parents were aware of the situation. He said,
No.
I asked him if he knew that both sets of parents had sat the boys down and the bully had admitted to bullying FTS, and he said,
No.
I asked him if he wanted to call the police and report an attempted murder. He said,
No.
I then asked if he would like to just walk away and go enjoy the rest of the meet with his family. He informed me that his family wasn't even there. I looked at him and said, Sir, do you realize what it looks like that an adult man is at a neighborhood swim meet without a family that is involved in the competition, who then decides to verbally assault a family about something which he was not involved in, nor had first-hand knowledge of? He allowed that he was out of line, and asked if I would extend an apology to the DFWF FTS for his behavior. He thought it was best that he leave post-haste. I agreed. It is always amazing how people puff up and use the police as a cudgel, until the police show up and start asking questions. 3. My very entitled parent story begins at Costco. For those who aren't fully aware of what a Costco actually is, allow me to enlighten you with this knowledge. A Costco is basically Walmart, but with everything supersized, which for those who live in the UK, a supermarket but with everything 2 to 4 times bigger. They do have Costcos in the UK, but they aren't as popular as they are in the US. The inside is like a giant warehouse. This is for context and to understand the layout of the entire store. Usually at the checkout area there is a food court where you can order a variety of foods, more on that later. Today's cast: EM entitled Mom, EK entitled Kid about 6 or 7 years old, ED entitled Dad, EU entitled Uncle, NA Normal Aunt, MS Ms Supervisor, CO Cool Officer, and me. Wait, why do I hear boss music? This story takes place about 2 weeks ago. So, as all of those who live in the southern US or the peninsula that is called Florida, there is this thing called hurricane season. It is a season where it's hot and rainy and muggy all at once, and it can't be stopped. With all the hysteria of prepping for the impact of Hurricane Dorian, you can imagine how many people there were piling their carts high with the supplies, to be prepared for the weeks that were supposed to come without power, and the amount of devastation that usually comes post-hurricane. It was a relatively normal day. I had expected things to go as normally as they could. We ended up getting the somewhat scraps of non-perishables and some supplies. By the time we had finished scavenging whatever was left over from the store, my mom, yes, I'm a college student who still lives with their parents, lame, had asked if we could stop by McDonald's and grab a bite. I was hesitant at first because I still wanted to check around the store for any extra supplies we can use to barricade or find any more non-perishables. And that's when I spot the food court. My mom asks me if I want to check out the food court, so we buy our supplies and wheel our cart just outside the food court. I get a glance at the menu from afar and I tell my mom to tell me what she wants so I can get it and leave. There's a long line of people waiting for their meals. I try to pass the time by playing on my Tamagotchi and looking around. As the line gets shorter, I look up to see a family of 4 people who weren't there before. Taking notice of this, I clear my throat. Excuse me, you just cut the line in front of me. ED and EM ignore me. Hey, you guys just got in front of me. I was here first. EM turns around.
No, you were standing around. We got in line, and now you're saying we cut you.
ED and EU hear the commotion and turn around. ED to EM.
Sugar Bear, what's the big idea?
This lady thinks we cut her in line.
I don't know what you're trying to do or say to my wife, but you better stop.
EU is just watching all of this while EM flashes me a smug grin. I just shrug it off at first, tending to my Tamagotchi, Bobby, when suddenly I see EM and ED look at each other and then whisper something to EK. The line then moves up a little as another satisfied person leaves with their food. They didn't move up the line, and instead EK walks behind them. I'm trying my best to focus on my digital pet when suddenly EK is standing in front of me.
My mommy and daddy told me I could have that toy, now give it to me.
No, it was a gift, bye.
No, give me my toy now, mommy!
EM snaps neck at 1.39 Mach. Simplified, really freaking fast.
What did you say to my precious baby girl? She took my toy. How dare you?
How dare me? How dare you? You tell your kid to take something from me?
She's just trying to play with her toy, and you ripped it out of her precious hands.
EU finally says something while most of the cafeteria goers and some staff are looking on.
It's true. I saw her, says EU. Someone call the cops. You should be ashamed of yourself, blaming your crimes on an innocent little girl.
I start shaking as I begin to panic. It wasn't true. I could feel tears forming in my eyes as EM takes my precious toy away. I'm not a very confrontational person, and I don't like being yelled at. Past issues.
Besides, a fat fuck like you shouldn't be playing with toys or eating fast food. You should be exercising and eating right.
As soon as I start panicking, I look up in my blur of tears as a woman in the infamous red shirt had come by to see the commotion. Ponytail up, uniform in check, my hero. She walks into the cafeteria, talks to one of the cashiers who had called the incident in, and she points to the entitled family. MS briskly walks over to us. Hello. I'm a supervisor for this section of Costco. I heard over the radio that one of my cashiers was having trouble with a few customers. Can you tell me what's wrong?
This liberalistic piece of crap stole that toy from my niece and wouldn't give it back. She then continued to berate us and tell us that we cut her in line when she clearly was standing around.
EM nods in agreement. And do you have proof that you own the toy? EM looks at MS, then me, then begins to look in her absurdly large tote bag, while ED comforts EK and EU stutters before he falls onto one detail of my Tamagotchi. The hand-painted stars on the outer shell.
The white paint on the toy. I remember my niece and I painting it just before we left the house today. It's acrylic paint and layered.
Wouldn't it be fresh paint, though? The paint I used in my toy was spray paint, you idiot. You could see the eerie anger that was building up in all three of them. I'm shaking from this. Well, if she did take the toy, as you said before, we can just review the camera footage. It should clear it all up. Come on. I and the rest of the entitled family follow MS to the front of the store, where we wait for an officer to come and resolve this dispute. Around 10 minutes later, an officer shows up, and MS tells the story. She then leads the officer to God knows where. I try to separate myself from the small group by standing 5 to 8 feet away from them. I'm shaking and panicking because I never had any interaction with the police, let alone being accused of robbery. If you've never had an encounter with an officer, it's scary. I just wanted my pizza, man. 20 minutes go by and CO comes out to where ED, EU, EK, EM, and I are waiting. During those 20 minutes, the entitled family shooting me nasty looks. MS and CO approach us and tell ED,
Well, I reviewed the footage and she's right.
He points to me.
That's impossible. The toy is...
Shut up and let me finish. She came into the store with the toy as well. You cut in front of the line. She was in front of you.
But that's not fair. The video footage had to be lying.
EU was red in the face as ED and EK watched on. EM then marched over to a trash can and grabbed an empty bottle of soda and threw it at the officer.
That's it. Turn around.
What?
Ma'am, you're being arrested for assault on an officer and disturbing the peace. Turn around and make my job easier. EM then tries to run away, but was tackled by the officer, who was then face-planted into the damp concrete just outside the store. The EM was in hysteria, saying that it was all a setup, and pointing at me while screaming,
I'll be seeing you in court.
EU and ED ended up with a fine, while I had to talk with a supervisor, a manager, and a police officer to tell them what happened. I ended up leaving 2 hours later. Oh, and my mom, she was roaming the jeans section of Costco. I never got a notice to appear in court. Oh, forgot to mention N.A. After the whole ordeal, I met N.A. in the parking lot of Costco. She was right across from my parked car. Still shaking, I was about to enter my car when she shouts, "Hey, you there!" I turn around to see a woman in her mid-30s jogging over to my car. "I'm EU's younger sister. I'm sorry I didn't get to stand up for you earlier. I didn't want to be a bother, but I know my brother. EU can be a big jerk." Thanks. I gotta go, though." She nods and runs back to her car and drives off. I get in and go home to prepare for a hurricane that's about to mess us up by a landslide. 4. So I worked at a pretty well-known and popular aquarium over the summer. Usually my job was great, and the kids were always enthusiastic about learning about our cool animals. And the parents are usually just as enthusiastic. We had the occasional rude guest, but my summer there was great until my very last day. We had a stand at one section of the aquarium where we had cool shark teeth, jaws, and a skull to show kids who were interested. We even had a really cool megalodon tooth that was really popular with the guests. Anyway, enter EP and her 2 daughters. I want to call them SK1 and SK2 because they were genuinely very sweet the whole time, and seemed to be getting very embarrassed by their mother. SK1 is the older sister, but they seemed about the same age, maybe 11 and 12. The ages, I think, are pretty important to the story. Now, I want to note before I go into it that EP doesn't think she's entitled to any objects or anything in this story. No, she was entitled to wasting my time, and try to make a fool/example out of me to her daughters. So now, into the story. They walk up to my stand and I greet them and go through my whole script of what each tooth was, where they came from, talked about the jaws, the number of teeth they have, etc. Things were going great until I started telling the kids about the Meg tooth. SK1 was holding it and seemed in awe of its size, and I told her that there was no need to worry about seeing it in the oceans, as it is extinct. She then asks me how and when it went extinct, and I told her that, well, we don't know the exact year that it died, but it outlived the meteor that killed the dinosaurs, and it went extinct due to a lack of prey millions of years ago. She and SK2 immediately had a confused look on their face and said,
Meteor? What meteor?
I was a little surprised and said, "You know, the meteor that killed the dinosaurs?" And they both shook their heads. I was shocked. As I said, these girls were both pre-teens and they had never heard of the meteor. I was about to tell them about it when EP jumped in. She immediately announced, "Oh, we never heard of that story before." I asked them what story they had heard instead, and SK1 excitedly said, "The flood." At this point I was just thinking, oh no, but continued on, since part of my job was educating people about our animals and fossils. I told them that the flood they were talking about happened much later than the meteor, and that was the thing that killed humans. The meteor killed the dinosaurs. They asked how, so I told them it hit the Earth, caused the entire planet to be covered with ash, volcanoes were erupting, etc., and that made the planet unlivable for a lot of life on Earth, and things started to die as a result. That's ultimately how we evolved from the furry little poopers that we used to be. At this point, EP starts laughing like the whole concept was absurd. She tells me that no, that's just a theory. So I tell her that actually we have proof that it happened. There's a thick layer in the Earth's crust that has a specific chemical makeup due to the result of the meteor, and that all dinosaur bones we find are in that layer or lower. She tells me that again, no, that it is just a theory. I was pretty taken aback by that comment, seeing as I told her she could literally dig down right now and find the layer I was talking about, and that people have literally seen it with their own eyes, but somehow it was still theoretical. Whatever. I didn't want to argue with the lady since her kids were right there, and it was clear she was the type of person that wouldn't be convinced because they're crazy. But she just kept pushing. She said that there is scientific proof that the world is only 3,000 years old, so that there couldn't have been a shark alive millions of years ago, despite her daughter literally holding a tooth from one. I told her that actually no, there's scientific proof that it's millions of years old. And she said, no, that's just a theory. Again. She then told me I should educate myself and read some scientific articles on it. This is where it got even worse. I just said, "Ma'am, I have read many scientific papers on this topic. I study biology and graduate this year. I've had to read several papers on this exact topic." Well, clearly you aren't reading real papers. There is proof that the Earth is only 3,000 years old. Plus, no one was alive millions of years ago to prove that it is any older than this. You're looking into the wrong stuff. You really should look into creationism. My blood was pretty much boiling at this point, because I had to contain my anger. See, I am considered a cast member where I work, and part of my job is to keep up a chipper attitude and smile a lot. So I was trying to do this, while also answering this EP's crazy questions, and hopefully getting through to her poor kids. So I literally started explaining carbon dating to her. I've looked into creationism. I am a confirmed Catholic and know all about the flood. You aren't telling me anything new, but that would have happened much later than the meteor. And even as a Catholic, I know that there is hard evidence that the Earth is millions of years old. We know this because we can carbon date the bones we find. That's just a theory. Everything you're saying is just a theory. No, actually it's not. I know exactly how carbon dating works, and I have had to use it in school. It's essentially a mathematical formula that tells us the age of something because we know how long it takes for carbon to decay. Now this whole time, SK1 and 2 have been standing there with their heads down, touching all the teeth I had laid out for them. When I said this, SK1 popped her head up and said, "Oh, like they do with trees. How they can count the rings and know how old they are." I was so relieved when I heard this, because it sounded like the poor girl was listening more to me than she was to EP, so I put on the biggest smile I could and said, "Kind of, it's a bit different, but it's the same concept, yeah. We can tell how old things are without being there for their whole lives, just like with trees. These animals don't have rings to count, though, so we have to test them another way." The girl was smiling and nodding along and looking super excited about the concept of dinosaurs, until EP cut in again, telling me how I was wrong and that once again everything I was saying was a theory. I told her that no, this was not a theory. The thing she was thinking of was probably the theory of evolution, which yes, is still technically a theory, though honestly anyone with a functioning brain and a basic understanding of biology would agree that we definitely evolved into being a species, but that this was not at all the same thing. She just shook her head and violently started scrolling through her phone to find some of her research she said existed. She then became exasperated and turned to SK2 and said, "What was that man's website again?" And then started talking about their pastor's website, or a website he had stumbled upon or something. I internally groaned at that one. Her proof was some random website on the internet. That was the proof she was arguing against with me. A website that literally anyone can make. SK2 just shrugged and immediately looked back down and continued to feel the teeth I had out. EP realized she couldn't find her proof and just said, "Well, there's proof of what I'm saying. And what you're saying has just been disproved as a theory. So again, you should just look into creationism." I just gave up at that point and nodded and said, "I already have, but okay, have a nice day." As soon as she left, my stand got swarmed by a couple of new families ready to see the teeth. She had been giving off such an aura that it caused other people to stay away from the stand. It was ridiculous. Thankfully, the next family that came over, the dad had a Jurassic Park shirt on, so that at least gave me some relief. I just really hope that those girls go to college for biology or something, or at least learn about these things in high school. Right now I just feel so bad for them, and I'm so angry at EP for keeping something so big from her children. I can't imagine what other things those poor girls have never heard of. And I get that in the US we have religious freedom, but making your kids so ignorant to huge facts and sheltering them to this point should honestly be viewed as child abuse. 5. I work for a software company which, through our platform, enables our clients to sell tickets for events both online and on-site. But not the Great Evil Empire, TMLN. We do a range of events, but we do a number of fairs and carnivals over the summer. Some of our clients require our team, me included, obviously, or there would be no story, to travel to their events to help with on-site management and troubleshooting equipment, etc. So, on to the EPs. This happened at one fair in California during the fair's arena events. The first happened during Monster Trucks, the second during the Demolition Derby. The final weekend of the fair, which is 2+ weeks long, I had been living in a hotel and away from home for a month. The fair holds some big dirt arena events, and on Friday night, the monster trucks are roaring from 7 to 8:30 p.m. in all their monster truck glory. The box office is open from 7 to 8, selling the last of the tickets available, and of course, due to fire code, seating is limited, etc. At around 8:10, I move in to start locking down the point of sale systems and storing them. Note, I'm not a cashier, don't sell tickets or touch the money. The windows of this particular box office are just metal mesh and have no covers or closures, so I'm completely visible to the public as I'm breaking stuff down. Enter entitled family, complete with already sniveling children, ED, EM, SC1, and S2.
Hey man, I need to buy some tickets for the monster trucks. My kids wanted to see.
Oh, the box office is actually closed.
Nah man, just turn the computer on and sell me some tickets real quick.
I actually can't do that. The box office is closed, and there is only about 15 more minutes left for the event.
Well, let me just give you some money and let me in the stand.
Sir, I can't do that. I'm not a cashier. I don't handle the fair's money or control the door. No one will let you in.
Why you gotta be like that? Just let us in so our kids can see.
At this point, I'm getting pretty annoyed and tired of this BS. Listen, I can't let you in. It's not my call. I can't sell you tickets. The show's almost over. I'm sorry, but...
You are sorry. You're a sorry-ass motherfucker. I told my kids we could go see the monster trucks.
At this point, EM starts cheerleading ED.
And now they're crying. And you aren't going to do anything about that?
No, sir, because it's not my call to make. I'm just trying to do my job.
Fuck you, then.
And the whole sniveling brood made their way down towards the carnival rides. 2 nights later, it's time for the Demolition Derby in the same arena, and this event is from 6 to 8 p.m. scheduled, and is pretty much sold out, save for a few seats left. This is awesome because my boss, MB, had flown in to close out the fair, meet with the management, etc. But since he's a good dude, he's in the box office with me helping out. Largely since this event has a few tickets left, we realize box office will be closed soon after it starts. But we have a system set up to help people out who have tickets on their phones, or can't find their online purchases. So the cashiers have gone, MB and I are in the box, and I'm packing up one system and are talking to our entitled mom, EM, and our depressed chicken nugget of a son.
Oh my gosh, it's taking me forever to get here. I live an hour away and it's taking me an hour to get parking because
yada yada yada, she prattles on. Then,
I know I purchased the tickets I need for this event right before I left the house because the website confirmed my purchase, but I still haven't gotten an email.
Okay, we can help. What's your last name or the last name on the CC you used for the purchase? Last name given, search tool enabled, 0 results.
Well, I know I made the purchase. That's so weird. Well, maybe it takes time to register.
No ma'am, it's all real time and you should receive an email within 30 minutes of your purchase, usually much sooner. How long ago did you make the purchase online?
Well, I left my house an hour or so ago, and I made the purchase then, so I should have tickets. You have to let me in, right?
No, ma'am. If there is no order and no purchase present in the system, then there is no ticket and therefore no entrance.
Well, I need some tickets then.
MB is looking stuff up. Sorry, ma'am, but the event has been sold out for a while. We are just checking orders for people and packing up.
But I know! I bought them!
Sorry, ma'am, but we can't find that. And we have no tickets left to sell. The seats were all taken. And if you tried to buy them online in the last 90 minutes, the event was pretty much sold out. So it's likely you didn't get tickets.
But I told my son!
This begins a 15-minute exchange of her silently standing there awkwardly, and MB just looking back at her, interrupting with her asking,
"So there's nothing you can do?"
To which the response is, "No." Then the tears start, and
"My son really wants."
But we held our ground. Then we just shut down and turn and walk away. The moral of the story, you just cannot comprehend how if as a parent you didn't plan ahead, buy a ticket that's been available online for 3 months, show up late to the event and cannot get in, why on earth you would promise your kids, and then make it my fucking problem. And why would you think you can just infer that you bought a ticket and then act like we were all just supposed to let you in? Just stop. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to the Impractical Proudness of Parents, IPUP, number 19. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Well, today I learned that Tamagotchis still exist. I honestly didn't know that. I also learned that if I'm feeling hungry before I record, I should probably just go make something to eat, which is what I'm going to do now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.